Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Electile Dysfunction by Jamie Lee Scott. Narrated by Gabra Zackman and Todd McLaren. Chapter 1. Mimi. A black blur flew past my office door so fast I almost didn't see who it was. I yelled, "You look like you're dressed for a funeral." The blur yelled back, "You always look like you're dressed for a funeral." I wanted to come back with some snide retort, but the response was true. And at that moment I heard the front door open, and I didn't know who might be walking in. Thank goodness I kept my mouth shut, because I heard Uda Huber, our receptionist, say, "May I help you?" A deep male voice with a slight southern drawl responded, "Good morning, ma'am. I have an appointment with Miss Mimi Capurro at 8:30. I looked at my watch. He was 20 minutes early. If he'd worked for me, I'd have liked this guy. But as a client, I hated when they were this early, especially if I didn't have a previous client and I wasn't ready for them. Not that I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready to deal with people so early. But my door was open, and there he was, 10-gallon hat and all, standing right there where he could see me. Before she could respond, I said, "Uda, I'm ready." I stood and came around my desk to meet the man at the door. Uda worked hard, and I didn't think she needed to get up and show him to my office. Our building was a Victorian house that used to be the place where my husband ran his produce brokerage business. Or at least that's what he told me. My husband died in a plane crash, and since Dominic's death, I'm not really sure who I was married to or what he really did for a living. Someday when I got up the nerve I'd start snooping, but right now my heart wasn't in it. I had the entire house redecorated, and it was now the humble home of the Gotcha Detective Agency. After finding out about the Capurro family, I wanted the house to feel completely different, to change everything and make it my own, not the house I'd shared with Dominic. When I got to the door, I was impressed at the size of this southern gentleman. Tall as a beanstalk and just as skinny, I guessed he'd make both Nick and Charles look up to look him in the eyes. His eyes were a dark blue, set in tanned skin that had seen more than its share of sun. He put down his briefcase, removed his hat, and reached out to shake my hand. "Skinner Mathis, ma'am." I hated him on sight, mostly because the silver in his long brown sideburns made him look distinguished, and his leathery skin made him look rugged. But really, it was because if he was a woman, he'd have looked rode hard and put up wet. That's about the only horse rodeo term I know, but I had a feeling I was about to learn a whole lot more. But as a man, he looked damned sexy. It wasn't fair. I shook his calloused hand and welcomed him into my office. Then I went around, sat back down in my chair, and did my darndest to keep from fanning myself. I was still too young for hot flashes, but it was getting warm in here real quick. Before I could make a complete fool of myself, the blur in black waltzed into my office with a tall crystal glass filled with ice and brimming with white chocolate coffee. My new addiction, the canned Starbucks stuff you can get at the convenience stores and pour over ice. Only I get it at Costco in bulk and store it in the garage at the office, and at my house. Jackie Baccarin, my best friend and employee, handed me the glass, and I made introductions. I saw the appreciation in her eyes, too, as she offered him a beverage while looking him up and down. "No, I'm good. I'd like to get down to business, if you don't mind. I need to get to work." He was polite, but to the point. Jackie decided she'd stay and listen in. Floozy. That might be an exaggeration, because when she came back from her vacation, she had an engagement ring and a dainty gold band on her finger, and, well, how should I put this? The bitch eloped. Yes, there you have it. My very best friend in the big, wide world went and got married without me. In all fairness, the only people who knew were her kids, and that's only because they were with her. Because she'd never have married the guy without their approval. She certainly didn't need my approval, and if she'd have asked for it, I'd have refused an answer. Whatever, let's just drop the subject before I get pissed off. "Mr. Mathis, Uda explained that you want us to look into a possible fraud case." I pulled up the file on my laptop computer. Jackie walked over to my desk and looked over my shoulder. Normally this would drive me nuts, but I didn't want to be bitchy in front of a client, so I let it pass. "If we're going to be working together, I'd prefer you call me Skinner. Do you mind if I call you Mimi?" He looked at Jackie. And Jackie? In stereo, we said, "Not at all, Skinner." As he pulled papers from his briefcase, I kept glancing at his clothes. He was straight out of a rodeo arena or a Western store. He wore a short-sleeved plaid shirt with pearl snap buttons tucked into well-washed and heavily starched blue Wrangler jeans. He wore a trophy buckle of some kind, but I didn't want to stare at his crotch trying to figure out what it said, so I don't know how he won it. I'd heard the clop of his cowboy boots when he walked in, but I couldn't see them from my seat behind the desk. "Here's the deal." He shuffled through some papers he'd pulled from a briefcase. "I was in business with my old team roping partner for a few years. I should have known better, because you know how it is. You see someone screw over other people for years, and somehow you consider yourself friends, and you think, he'd never do that to me. We're friends. Well, I learned the hard way." Jackie put her hands on the back of my chair. "What kind of business were you in?" Skinner pulled a business card out of the breast pocket of his shirt and placed it on my desk. It was a plain white card with some sort of cattle brand embossed on it. The name read Stockyards Contractors and had Skinner's name and contact information. "I'm in the livestock business. I handle all sorts, but mostly I'm a stock contractor for rodeos." I asked, "This is the same business you were in with—" I was fishing for a name. "Sort of the same business. And I was in business with Bucky Cox." I felt Jackie stiffen behind me. "Bucky, I'm your man, Cox?" Skinner cringed. "The one and only." "Ugh." Jackie didn't even try to hide her dislike. "I see we're of the same mind regarding Bucky." Bucky Cox was the county supervisor, and he was running for another term. His face was everywhere. TV, buses, bus stops, Twitter ads, on Facebook under people you may know. We couldn't get away from him. Bucky Cox, his good old boy grin and his ever-present cowboy hat. Bucky was Salinas born and bred, and he was a cowboy through and through. He'd been a 5-time world champion saddle bronc rider before switching to team roping, and just about everyone in Salinas, home of the California rodeo, knew who he was. He used his world champion rodeo cowboy status to win the supervisor position, but it wasn't his first rodeo, excuse the pun. He'd played in politics with the Rodeo Association, and even with the city council before that. Bucky had his hand in a lot of pies. "This isn't going to go well for our agency when he finds out we're investigating him," I said, tapping my pen on the blotter on my desk. "So you won't take the case?" Skinner looked disappointed. "I need to know what we're investigating first." I started to look through the papers. "Bucky is Teflon. He writes bogus contracts, which I've been the victim of, but that's another story, and plays at shady deals. But this is the worst." He leaned forward and flipped the page for me. The picture was of a beautiful, fully appointed livestock trailer. The other photos on the page showed luxury living quarters and livestock stalls fit for royalty. I looked at the price at the bottom of the page and nearly choked. "Holy mother of—" "Yes, ma'am. Bucky bought that with my credit. And because of that, I now have no credit." He crossed his legs. "I'm in the livestock business. My livelihood depends on my good name and an excellent credit rating." I watched Skinner closely as he spoke. Somehow this story didn't add up. "And just how did he do that?" "It's called fraud, Mimi. And that's what I need help with. We're ready to go into a civil trial with this, but I think it's a criminal trial. I need to prove Bucky committed an egregious crime. He's everyone's best buddy, and no one wants to see him look bad with the election right around the corner. The police don't seem to have time to investigate and prove the crime, so I need to prove it myself. Bucky should be in prison, not on the supervisor's board." Jackie said, "You mean we have to prove the fraud for you?" Skinner cocked his head and smiled his charming smile that I'm sure melted many a cowgirl's heart. "Well, yes." That smile, the slightly crooked teeth, the wrinkles around his eyes, the realness was what sealed the deal. "Fine." I told him our fees and the upfront retainer. "If you don't mind, I'll pay the retainer in cash. With this case, I'm afraid to even write a check at this point. My wife made me take everything out of all of our accounts, in case somehow Bucky was somehow able to access those, too." I didn't see a ring on his finger. No tan line. Huh. He was married. Never would have guessed it. "She may be right. Maybe a very smart move, but only if you have a very safe place for your money. Skinner threw back his head and laughed. Ma'am, my wife can shoot like a sniper, and I'd say our money couldn't be safer if it was in Fort Knox. He pulled a package out of his worn leather briefcase and counted out the bills. My curiosity got the better of me. So what exactly did happen? Again, Skinner flipped a page for me. It was a letter from a local bank. I'd say which one, but that's sort of privileged information. I had no idea what was going on until I got the congratulations letter from the bank. The letter congratulated him on his new purchase, his $200,000 purchase. Yeah, congrats. Or not. I contacted the finance manager for the Fitzduring Trailer Company, Mr. I looked at the folder. Mr. Josh Taylor. Yes. He said he called the number on the credit application and asked for me. A man who identified himself as Skinner Mathis answered and verified all of the details needed to process the application. Jackie asked, "How would Bucky have this information?" Bucky and I traveled a lot of miles together. We had a lot of conversations. I don't even begin to know the things I told that man, over the years. I had no idea he'd be cataloging it to use later to commit fraud. Skinner leaned back in his chair, defeated. Jackie came around the desk, looking at me as she did. "Girl, you ever screw me like that, I won't be looking for a PI. I'll be looking for my Glock." She sat next to Skinner. "So what do you want us to do?" "The trailer hasn't been delivered. It was a custom-made contract. The work was halted when I contacted the finance manager. But since it had been started, I'm liable for the contract. I'm not paying $200,000 for a contract I didn't enter into." I looked through the file. I still didn't get it. How exactly was it that Bucky was going to have this trailer delivered? I mean, how was he going to get away with it? Oh, you and I don't have the devious mind he has. He'd have a scheme on the other end, and his precious wife would be in on it with him. They're screwing a poor woman out of a nice barrel racing horse as we speak. That doesn't answer my question. How was he going to have the trailer delivered? He wasn't. He was supposed to pick it up. While Jackie sat across from me, I pulled up my handy-dandy PI software and ran a check on Skinner Mathis. Just how innocent was Skinner? "In all the miles you and Bucky traveled together, he never brought you in on any of his scams?" Jackie sounded intrigued, but I knew she was baiting him. Funny thing, he didn't seem like a scam artist at the time. He came across as a good guy. It wasn't until I went into business with him that I realized he was cheating people, committing fraud and outright stealing. "Mr. Mathis, you aren't exactly a saint yourself. I see here you were arrested last month on theft charges. Learned a little something from Mr. Cox, did you? Or maybe not, since you got caught." Skinner jumped to his feet. "No, that's just it. Bucky is the one who had me arrested. He claimed I stole his trophy saddle from when we team roped together. I swear to you, that's my saddle. It's my saddle, and now he has it. He was able to convince the police that it was his. He has his saddle, the header's saddle. Mine was the heeler's saddle, and that greedy that jerk, he wanted it all. He's always wanted it all." Skinner deflated. I had no idea what the difference was between a header's saddle and a heeler's saddle, and I really didn't care. But I guess if we were going to take on this man's case, I was going to learn a lot of things about horses, trailers, rodeo, and whatnot that I didn't think I'd ever know. "So a header doesn't need a heeler's saddle?" The word sounded stupid just leaving my mouth. "They are trophy saddles," he said. "Like in bowling when you win a trophy. In rodeo they give buckles and saddles and such. There really isn't a difference in the saddles, it's just that in team roping, it's a team, and the header—" Courtney walked into the office, also clad from head to toe in black. Courtney was my surveillance guru, and one of the best finds since opening my agency. Well, other than Charles, of course. "That's the guy who ropes the head of the steer, then dallies and turns him off so the heeler can rope the heels, therefore called the heeler." She stepped forward and jabbed her hand toward Skinner's belly. "Skinner Mathis. Wow, nice to meet you. I've been a fan since I was a kid." Skinner beamed. "And you are?" "Courtney Chris. I work for Mimi Capurro and Charles Parks. Are you hiring the firm?" Skinner nodded. "I hope so." Courtney looked at me like a fangirl, eyes wide. I could tell by the eager, "can I sit in" expression on her face. She wanted to stay. "Have a seat," I said. Skinner was just telling us about how he'd like us to investigate his old team roping partner for fraud. "Not Bucky." Courtney sounded disappointed. "Bucky," I confirmed. "Can you be a part of this investigation and be impartial?" Courtney looked at the floor, then at me. Then she looked Skinner in the eye. "I'll be honest, Mr. Mathis. I never did like Bucky. Sorry. Something has never sat right with me about him. And when he got into city politics, well, that was the icing, wasn't it? I just knew he was a snake." She was in. Whether she was telling the truth or not, I had no idea. I'd ask her when Skinner was gone, but I was pretty sure she had just pulled a line of bullshit out of a hat. She earned her place in this investigation. And right now, everyone needed something to keep their mind busy. We had just finished a difficult case where one of our decoys had been killed while working on a prostitution sting for us, and the fallout still hurt. There had been some personal fallout recently, too, and the entire office was still in mourning. This case seemed like just the right thing to keep our minds moving forward. "His wife is still running barrels, isn't she?" There was a twinkle in Skinner's eye. Whoa, that was more than a twinkle. Then it was gone. "Yes. She nearly won the world championship 2 years ago. Looks like their daughter is fixing to win it this year, but they may be losing their good horse, so I'm not sure. Though his daughter still has her good horse." Courtney looked distressed. "Losing a horse? Like putting it to sleep?" "No, but it's a long story. Another of Bucky's business deals. Not my problem. I have enough problems without worrying about his. Though you may want to have a chat with Pamela Brown about that business deal she had going with good old Mr. Cox. Like I said, I have enough problems of my own." "Don't we all?" Courtney commiserated with Skinner. "So you follow team roping?" "Rodeo, actually. I have since I was a kid. Salinas is a big rodeo town, as you know. I got hooked at an early age. Junior rodeo, high school rodeo, scholarship at Cal Poly Pomona." Skinner's brows raised, then lowered. "I'm a Cal Poly San Luis Obispo alum myself." He looked her up and down. "So you aren't a buckle bunny, then?" Even I knew what a buckle bunny was, and I couldn't believe he'd ask Courtney such a derogatory question. For the uninitiated, a buckle bunny is a girl who goes to rodeos to pick up cowboys and have sex with them. Or if she's really lucky, a matter of taste, I suppose, she'd snag him and marry him. Courtney giggled like a teenager. "Good one. Nope, just a former cowgirl. I miss it sometimes. Cowboys like you and Bucky were my heroes back in the day. Having you in the office is like having a celebrity here, but I promise not to be a fangirl." Under her breath, Jackie said, "Too late." "So I think our next move should be to go out to Bucky's place and pay him a visit." I stood, indicating the meeting was coming to an end. "Would you like to join us, Skinner?" "I think you should talk to Pam Brown before you visit with Bucky. She can tell you about her business dealings with him. They just came out of a nasty court battle, and I'd say she was on the losing end." "Why don't you save me the time and give me the details?" "I'm not privy to the details, so anything I say would be gossip." He put his hat back on his head. "I've got to get to work. I can't go out to Bucky's with you. He's got a restraining order against me." That would have been nice to know up front. I looked at Jackie and Courtney, who now had thin, straight lines for lips. "Courtney, want to help me before we leave? It's almost time." Jackie dashed toward the kitchen. Courtney didn't even say goodbye as she followed after Jackie. "Mr. Mathis, full disclosure up front is nice." I came around the front of my desk. "I'm going to let this one pass, but please, if there is anything else I need to know that is going to affect our ability to investigate, let me know now. Getting blindsided is not one of my favorite activities." He assured me there wasn't, and I walked him out to his pickup at the curb. As we walked down to the sidewalk, I explained how we would go about investigating Bucky Cox, and that we had to be very discreet because of the campaign. Discreet, that is, until we had concrete proof. Then we could blow the lid off his campaign and muddy his little waters until his campaign was in the toilet. Skinner reached in his pocket and pulled out another wad of cash. "Look, I know I gave you a retainer, but this should be enough for the entire case. When this runs out, you'll have to be finished. It's all I have." I didn't want to count the cash in front of him and look greedy, but the thickness of the stack of bills told me it would be more than enough to cover our expenses for at least several days' worth of work, if not more. And if we were efficient, maybe we'd be able to give him back some of the money. I'd count the exact amount when I got back inside. I knew he knew exactly how much he'd given me, especially if it was all he had left. When I got inside, everyone was waiting for me in the foyer. I dashed by them to my office and put the cash in my safe. Then I came back to meet up with the ladies and head out. Courtney, all 5 feet nothing of her, was dwarfed by Jackie's 5'6" or so, plus the 4-inch heels of her Jimmy Choos. She'd pulled out all the stops that morning. We all had on little black dresses and could probably stock a small store with what we own in our closets. Owning black clothing was a hazard of being a private detective. Fading in on a dark night was a necessity. "You ready?" My stomach lurched. "We still have time. Do you think we can drive by Bucky's ranch before we go?" "You don't want to get there early?" "I don't want to go at all." I walked toward my office. "I'm going to grab some flat shoes in case we get out of the car at Bucky's." Walking out to the parking lot, I saw Nick pull up in his Porsche Boxster. Jackie said, "Courtney and I will wait in your car." I nodded and walked over to the driver's side of Nick's car and leaned down as he rolled down the window. Nick Christensen was my boyfriend. Oh, I love that word, boyfriend. We'd been dating almost since he'd moved back to Salinas to work for the police department. Detective Christensen worked homicide, and we'd become reacquainted when I'd been working for a New York Times best-selling author as a bodyguard, and that author's assistant had been murdered. Nick and I had been in a weird relationship back in college, and I'd hoped to never see him again. But with time passing, we had a better relationship this time around. Nick had been a looker in college, with wavy black hair always just a little too long, and piercing gray eyes staring out from his dark, brooding face. Now he was even more handsome, with the lines of time adding to his character, and the brooding turned to wisdom. For a man I'd never wanted to see again, I'd fallen pretty hard, very fast. "Don't you look snazzy?" I said. Unlike his normal, simple suit for work, he wore a tailored charcoal gray jacket with a deep purple shirt and a lavender tie. It was obvious he'd learned a few things from Charles about dressing. I'd bet he was even using Charles's tailor, because the fit around his torso was snug, and his shirt sleeve showed about the same amount of fabric I'd seen when Charles wore a suit. "Thanks." A man of many words. I looked past him to the passenger seat, and then back. "I thought you had to work today. Are you going to the funeral after all?"
Chapter 2. Charles. Nick turned away from Mimi and looked at me. Oh, hell no. I wasn't going to be the one to explain it to her. I sat quietly in the passenger seat and didn't say a word. I'd been getting good at it. It might be a new characteristic for me. Or not. He looked back to Mimi. "No, we aren't going to the funeral. The time for mourning is over. But you don't have to worry, because you're always dressed in black, ready for any funeral any day." I'm pretty sure I saw Mimi visibly exhale. The silence ended. I leaned down and asked, "So, Trader, were you planning to go?" She stuck her head clear in the car, right in front of Nick's face, her freshly colored caramel hair with creamy highlights brushing his nose. "I've been dreading it all morning. So has everyone else. But we were going to support you, you jerk. And now you aren't going?" I leaned over and got nose to nose with her. "It's dead and buried. It's a hunk of metal, scrap metal, and I don't ever want to see it again." She blew her tic-tac minted breath in my face. "Not the damn car, idiot! Anthony's funeral!" I shook my head. "I sent flowers. I'm pretty sure his family doesn't want me there. They've already tried to have me brought up on murder charges." Nick and Mimi looked at me, eyes wide. "They actually tried to have me charged in Anthony's death. Something about causing him so much grief that I baited him into suicide." I really felt for his family, and I understand they'd lost their only son. But maybe they should have been there for him more while he was alive. Then he'd have had someone to turn to, and not had to endure the loneliness. They'd hated his way of life, but in death he was now somehow a saint. and I had tainted, or in their eyes, killed him. You realize that's bogus, right? Nick asked. I stared at him. Did I look stupid? Mimi slammed the back of her head on the door as she tried to stand. Crap! She backed out of the car, but still had her hands on the windowsill, and her face in the window. I didn't order flowers. It's probably too late. It won't matter. They'll never even notice. It's the thought that counts. Are you still going? Mimi cocked her head and rubbed the back of it. Are you? I shook my head. Like I said, not my place. Besides, like Nick said, the time for mourning is over. My baby is gone. Time to move on. The hunk of metal was my baby. My Porsche Spyder 550. My precious baby of a car. I'd treated that car better than I treated myself, which was pretty damn good. And within a matter of minutes, it was a pile of rubble on the rocks off of Big Sur. Who drives a car they're unfamiliar with like a bat out of hell, on winding roads they don't know, in weather that may affect the conditions? Apparently, the idiot Anthony was screwing. Well, not anymore, unless they have cars and roads and hell. I'd gone to Monterey to talk to Anthony about our breakup. Not to reconcile, just to talk. I'm not one to get mushy, but we had years under our belt, and I didn't want to cringe every time I thought of all the time we had together, good and bad. It ended badly, and in no part due to me. Well, maybe in some part due to me. But I'm not the one who cheated. I got busy. He got busy. We drifted. He drifted into the arms of another. I didn't. The guy he drifted to was one jealous creature. And while Anthony and I were saying our last goodbyes, making it a good closure, and giving me a chance to have my say, I always have to have my say, he snatched my keys from the table and sprinted out to my car before I knew what was happening. But just like a mama knows her baby's cry, I knew the sound of my Spyder's engine. That crazy mofo has stolen my car. My baby. No way on God's green earth did I think it'd end in death. Who gave a shit about him? I was talking about my Spyder. Okay, fine. He didn't die in the car accident. I want you to think he did because he broke up my relationship with Anthony and ruined my personal life, then mangled my car. But he lived. At first, I was glad he was alive, only so I could press charges against him for grand theft auto. In the end, I didn't even do that, because the guy was going to have a shitty life going forward. That would be punishment enough for his incredibly stupid actions. I didn't need to add fuel to the fire. He was in pretty bad shape. Anthony took it hard. Being the prima donna he was, he didn't want to be with a man anymore. I'm sorry I don't mention the guy by name, but I've drawn a complete blank. And I'm not about to ask anyone because I don't really want to remember. Anthony was embarrassed at his lover's actions and horrified by the guy's looks after the accident. Yes, he's more shallow than I am. That old boy came crawling back to me. I do mean crawling, literally, on hands and knees, begging. I don't do begging, so I slammed the door in his face, evicted him from the old house, and had the locks changed on both houses. Since I'm keeping the house in Salinas, I had all the furniture moved here and sold the other house within a week. Sadly, I had no idea Anthony was such a weak man. He committed suicide. That was what had prompted all of the funeral talk. Mimi backed up and stood. Then I'm going to go out to Bucky Cox's place and have a look around. This got me curious and made me forget all about my Spyder. Bucky Cox? We started a new case this morning. Courtney, Jackie, and I are going out to Bucky's to talk to him. Mimi looked smug. She knew I loved politics.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?